Welcome to the T2 Hubcast. Join Martin, Dave, Spencer and guests as they discuss all things personal and professional development. The T2 Hubcast, brought to you by the People Performance People.
So welcome back to the T2 Hubcast with me, Martin Johnson.
And me, Spencer Locker.
Oh, you took your time there, Spence.
Well, I was going to say Selamat Petang, Martin. Apa kabar?
Which ties in nicely to
Good afternoon. How are you?
Which ties in nicely to introducing the theme for this Hubcast.
It does, doesn't it?
What language was you speaking there, Spence?
That was Malay.
Malay,
yes.
And why are you speaking Malay?
Because just recently I've had a trip out to Malaysia.
Yeah.
Did a little bit of work with a client in Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah.
And I just felt you've got to make the effort, haven't you?
Yeah.
You've got to make a little bit of effort to try and speak the language. And it just makes everything a little bit
So
nicer.
what did you do? Did you do your research before you went out and do yourself a little crib sheet? Or did someone do that for you while you was out there?
I did. I made myself a crib sheet before I went out. And I populated it with useful words and phrases that I thought might be appropriate. So, for instance, obviously we've got good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Well, they've got the same, haven't they? So I've got to know what particular time I've got to say certain things. And then you've got your please and thank yous, haven't you?
Yeah. And
how are you?
And one beer, please. Did you have that one down?
No, I didn't actually. That one didn't. I've got one thing here. Hovercraft saya penuh dengan belut.
So how come you started that with an English word, hovercraft?
Because it is Malay for my hovercraft is full of eels. Believe it or not.
Oh, I love it, Spence. So
Yeah.
you did your due. So let me explain why we're talking about this, because people are probably thinking, what the hell, right?
Yeah.
So Spencer's just been to visit a customer in Kuala Lumpur. We work with a global organisation out in the Far East, in Europe, Middle East, and South America.
Mm.
And we've been doing a bit of a regional tour where we're going out to the regions and we're delivering leadership training and personal development to the senior leaders in each region.
Yeah.
Your term was Kuala Lumpur, not a bad gig, Spence.
I've got to say that my autumn international season kicked off with a bang. Over to Malaysia via Dubai.
Yeah.
And then back again via Dubai. I stayed airside in Dubai, so I didn't see much. But I've got to say that I've been around. I haven't been all around the world, but I've done my fair share of travelling. I've seen lots of different cultures, and going to the Far East was a bit of an eye opener. Don't get me wrong, there wasn't much going on there that I didn't expect, but to actually be there, experience the culture, and interact with the locals and on a professional basis as much as a social basis, was quite an eye opener. Yeah, cool. Quite nice.
So I wanted to pick your brains on it, Spence, because obviously we deliver a lot of leadership development. We deliver a lot of engagements to customers here in Europe.
Yeah.
In the Western world, there we see certain trends of organizational cultures, of leadership practices and techniques.
Yeah.
And although lots of organizations are different, we see generally in the Western world some particular trends and commonalities. So I want to pick your brains. What were you've just visited the Far East.
Yeah.
You, like you say, you've dealt with groups of people who, let's face it, operate in an entirely different culture.
Yeah.
As a country, as a region. Yeah. But also different cultures in businesses. And I guess we were talking around the leadership styles and how they do differ in the East and in the Far East in the Western world. So I guess my first question, Spence, is what was the main cultural difference, would you say, that you experienced out there?
The main cultural difference, I think, is they are almost obsessed with politeness and etiquette.
So did you feel like a bit of a VIP out there?
No, I don't think I'd go as far as say VIP. They made me feel very welcome, don't get me wrong. But it was just the way they do things, the attention to detail, the things that they do to make you feel valued and worthy, I suppose, would be. It's little things like before I went, as I said, I made my crib sheet up, but I also thought, when I first went to the Middle East, I got tripped up a little bit by doing things that were at worst maybe mildly inappropriate, because I didn't know what the culture was. I didn't know what was acceptable and what was not acceptable. So I thought I'd do a little bit of research. And one of the things I found through my research was the offering of business cards is done with both hands.
What, in the Far East?
In the Far East. So in Kuala Lumpur, when they give you a business card, they don't just give it you with one hand, they give you it with both hands, and you've got to receive it with both hands.
Ah.
And you don't just stick it in your pocket. You've got to read it.
Right.
Now, this to me is like, well, some people might think, well, yeah, whatever. But this is actually meaningful, because this person is giving you something of themselves and you are accepting it with equal value, and you are taking a moment to sort of say, right, okay, this is the person I'm talking to. This is what they do. So spend a moment reading it before you put it away.
Ah, I get it. And did that happen? Did you experience that?
Well, it did. I did experience it, but the thing that kicked it off in my, because I read it and sort of absorbed it, but it wasn't really in the forefront of my mind until I actually booked into the hotel. And the lady who was behind the receptionist, when she gave me my room key, the little credit card room keys, gave it to me like that. And I just took it with one hand without thinking and thought, oh,
I've already broken a rule here.
But the thing is, this is a Marriott hotel, so they get it. But I've just sort of attuned, just a little bit of an adjustment. Attune yourself.
So your first observation then about visiting the Far East and the cultural difference was there is a consideration and etiquette in the way things are done between human beings.
Yes. Very much so, yeah.
Right. Okay. Great. So then you get into the customer premise, and you start observing them in the workplace. What was there any standouts or anything that differs to the Western world and the way our office culture is and our environment is?
There was. Because of what we do, because of we are putting the valuation on the people, where we're actually the work that we do is transforming businesses, because we're starting to value the people, the person behind the worker, aren't we? We're talking about the behavioural psychology, the way that we interact with people, the way we can cut down on any conflict, and so it's making people happier in the workplace. I feel that, as much as, if I can put it into a slight context, the business that I was working with, the customer I was working with, this particular office has only been going for 12, 18 months.
Yeah.
So it's really sort of early days, yeah. The teams, they've only been together a year or so they're still learning about each other. It is very much a multicultural situation out there, in the sense that I was working with Malaysians, Indonesians, Chinese. There was some Japanese there, but they weren't completely Japanese. They were, I don't like to say the word hybrid, but they were sort of mixed race between Japanese and Indonesian, Japanese and Malaysian. So there was a number of different cultures there. Even though it's the Far East, they've all got their own little quirks. Yeah. So when I was over there, they were asking me whereabouts I was from all the time, and I said the UK, and they always looked at me quizzically. I think basically because of my northern accent, they thought I was from Australia.
Really?
Yeah, because of the way I was talking.
Yeah.
But then again, we've got to bear in mind that we're not the only people who have regional accents. Yeah. And not only have we got regional accents, but we've got the Scots and we've got the Welsh and the Irish. So when we're talking about Malaysia, and we've got all that big melting pot of Indonesia, Bangladesh, India, all that stuff. We've also got the cultural, as in religious influence as well.
Absolutely.
Because as much as I learned Malaysian, I was working with people who were Islamic.
Yeah.
So their greetings are different. Even though, I mean, I'm picking at straws.
So does it lead to then, Spence, because it's far, like you say, far more multicultural maybe than what we experience, that because of that uncertainty around etiquette and around the way things are done, do you sense that sometimes therefore it's a little bit more insular over there, i.e. people just get on with it and keep themselves to themselves, or do they do a very good job of still creating that social ecosystem in the workplace?
I think it's a bit of a mixture of the both. They sort of rub along. They try not to put each other's noses out, but at the end of the day, the job is the priority.
Yeah.
And I think that
and
sometimes...
do you think we've lost that, Spence? Do you think we've lost that a little bit in the Western world? It's an interesting one. Let's link into this now and move it on. So what you sort of saying there, and I observe this in the Far East as well, is it's all about productivity and production. They are very efficient at producing things and getting the job done. Which is why the economies now in Japan and China over the last 2 decades have grown to what they are. They are a production beast.
They
get stuff done. They're efficient. Is that have we lost a little bit of that, do you think? Because we were once like that. We were once like that.
But the thing is, we've now come to the situation. We've come to the situation where, we want to get the job done, but we want people to be happy. And we realise that happy people are more productive.
So where in the Western world, North America, UK, Europe in particular, we've had this huge shift to, yes, production and outputs are important. But we want to, through employment law, through cultural change, we want to empower people, we want to engage people, and we want to make people happy. So we're trying to straddle the two more in the Western world than maybe we are in the Eastern side of the world. Would you agree with that?
I would. I think that as much as, we use the print psychometric tool. I deployed the print psychometric tool while I was out there. And I found that it works as much, if not as more accurately over there as it does here. So you have people who are more focused on detail and more.
I was going to say, so the testing you undertook, Spence, and I think you worked with 16, 18 leaders over the space. So over the people you engage with, say the 18 or so people and leaders you engage with, was there a more strong, dominant,
motivators?
Was the motivators more on the outputs, achievements, end game tasks, goal focus than the humanistic side?
No,
it wasn't.
No, it was an evil. Did I just say evil?
Yeah, an evil split.
An even split, just as it is here, a big cross section. But because of that got me to thinking that because everything's focused on efficiency, we're talking like single sentence emails and possibly a curt, no nonsense approach to communication. Because that's efficient, isn't it?
Yeah.
And as we said, the Far East seems to revel in the fact that it is efficient. And do we need to improve because we're inefficient? We are in the efficient sweet spot,
and therefore their view is it's not about it's not so much about the soft and social side and the social ecosystem. You go to work and you become efficient and you do your job, and we produce as a result of that. It's almost like an accepted norm in the world of work over there. Even though, like you say, 50% of the people you engage with have very humanistic, soft motivators. But they're sort of conditioned in the workplace to be efficient.
This is the way it is. Actually,
but we used to be like that in the Western world. If you look at, the UK, for example, we were a manufacturing, stronghold, and it was all about production and efficiency. And over time, that's changed, right? But they've still got that in abundance over there. So so linking into leadership then, Spence, you spent the whole week or so with them. Does that cultural difference then manifest in the way they lead in the organisation, even though they've still got the spread of motivators and personality styles and traits that we have here? Are they just does it lend itself to a little bit more of an old school directive autocratic style of leadership?
I think they're coming to that point in their development where they're starting to realise through influences from our side of the world that maybe it's not all about efficiency. And maybe the happy people are more productive. But it's at that beginning phase, because I believe that the reason why we're exploring it is because it was part of their culture many, many, many moons ago. So when we were a manufacturing powerhouse, a productive powerhouse, we influenced the Far East. They saw what we were doing. I mean, it's an interesting point that the print that we use was developed by Paul Hertz. And Paul Hertz was a protege of William Edwards Deming.
That's right, yeah.
William Edwards Deming led the production revolution in Japan and the Far East. So we're talking about lean manufacturing and things like that back in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s. So actually, the fact that we were influencing them one way, now it's actually coming back around where we've taken their teachings. Remember, we've talked about Zanshin and things like that.
Yeah, well, I was going to say Buddhism and the Buddhist monks and stuff, they do believe in that altruistic people side of happiness and fulfillment. It's just like you say, when you get into the large business districts of the Far East, where it's all about production and economy, they're very efficient at it. And sometimes then you lose that humanistic side.
Very much so,
And likewise, I sometimes challenge us in the Western world. Have we lost our cutting edge on the production and efficiency side? Have we gone too far over onto the cultural side? Now, I don't believe you can ever be too far over because like we're strong believers in happy, engaged, fulfilled people will be productive as a byproduct of that. But it is about, and this is what we always say, isn't it? I feel it's about finding the balance. We always say to people in leadership here, it's okay to drive urgency. It's okay to drive outcomes and hold people account, right? That's what strong leaders do. And if you get the people element of side of that right, then you can straddle the two. I think obviously in the Far East, from what you've observed and what we know, is that they do still drive those outcomes and they hold people to account, and it's all about production and being efficient. Their opportunity is just to maybe straddle across to the human side a bit more. I actually think our opportunity is to still not forget that we can engage our people and have inclusive cultures, but still drive outcomes. It doesn't mean to say you can't drive a stern message or an important message or pace or urgency, right? And that's what we've got to sort of, I think we've got to step back across the other way somewhat.
And I think this is typical of something that I think we are guilty of. Our culture's becoming like a pendulum, where they go all the way over to one side and all the way over to the other.
It's too extreme in one direction.
So
you're either overcompensating on the cultural and social and people element, and therefore your performance, productivity, pace, urgency, whatever it might, dwindle somewhat. Or you're absolutely focused on production and outputs, so much so that you start disengaging your people. But it's not about extremes.
No,
this is what we're saying.
Happy medium. And I've got a couple of theories on this, which we might sort of discuss in the future. But getting back to this cultural situation, we found that the personality traits that we as experienced deliverers of print, the certain traits, the social behaviours of certain traits are exactly the same over there as they are over here. Because there are certain motivators that are quite if they are in a certain, so we've got a prime motivator, an unconscious motivator that is your main motivator, that's your number one motivator, and then the secondary motivator is low. So that first one is quite dominant. That is quite, you can see it within a room. It's like we had a person come into the room, and you could see straight away by the way that person's appearance, they were different to everybody else in the room. And I'm there thinking, I wonder if they're a 4 or a 7. And it turns out they were a 4.
Absolutely. Which you're describing numbers, but for people listening, it's a certain motivator that certain people have where they want to look and appear different and stand out from the crowd. So what you're saying is your experiences, they're almost wired evenly and as disparate as we are here in the West.
Very much so,
But just in terms of the overarching workplace culture, they are still more on the side of efficiency and production, and we're moving more onto the side of cultural and social.
Yeah, I think to be honest with you, they've got to that point now where it's been. I mean, the people I was really lucky. The people that I worked with aren't people who've been in the same job for a long time. They've moved around jobs, and when I say moved around jobs, because of the area of the Far East. When they move jobs, it's not necessarily just a case of moving somewhere else in Indonesia or Malaysia or Kuala Lumpur, but they're actually living in Japan and working in Japan.
Yeah.
They're actually moving to Indonesia. They're moving to Korea. They're moving to all these different places to do different jobs in different cultures. And those cultures are also moving. That's what I'm saying is when we're talking about a melting pot, a multicultural melting pot in Malaya, or Malaysia rather, it is quite tangible because you've got all these different cultures. But even
which then starts to fuel diversity.
Well, yes, but that's the thing is in the social sense, you're getting diversity and you're getting a certain understanding of other cultures. But the overarching message is it's all well and good that you identify as Indonesian or Korean or Malaysian or whatever, but it's the job.
Yeah,
the job is number one. You do your number. Yeah.
So, what did you identify? Because we always talk about outside of personality styles and motivators, etc. There's this easy to understand way you express yourself to the world, which is you either internalize or you externalize. Yeah. You're an introvert or an extrovert, and that's a sliding scale. You're not one or the other. You're on a sliding scale of introversion or extroversion. I've been doing a bit of work recently, Spence, that I'm going to bring out on the hub in a short while, because the big myth about introversion and extroversion is this: introverts are shy, extroverts are confident. What I've now started to see and put together, and through our work with one-to-ones and the motivators, is if you split introvert and extrovert, you can be a confident introvert or a shy introvert.
Yeah.
You can be a confident extrovert or a shy extrovert.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's different descriptors as to what that looks like.
Yeah.
So just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you can't hold yourself socially. Just because you're an extrovert doesn't mean to say that you don't feel anxious in certain situations. Right.
Yeah.
So when we start splitting it up into 4 areas, I can be a confident introvert or a shy introvert. I can be a confident extrovert or a shy extrovert. Right. It starts to then look at how this thing manifests in different ways.
Yeah.
But what was your overall observation out in Malaysia? Was it that because of this multicultural, this diversity of the workforce, because it was relatively a new setup, or just because of the personality styles you were dealing with, was it more when you're delivering as a trainer at the front, was it more introversion you experienced or extroversion? I mean, there's a number of things at play. You're speaking in a different language.
Yeah.
They're trying to, compute what you are saying in a second language.
Yeah.
So I'm not expecting the engagement levels to be what they maybe are with an English audience. But what did you observe? Do you think there's more introversion or extroversion there? And because these were leaders, right?
Yes,
leaders.
Yeah, there were. It was very much like a British what we do in our classroom. It's very much down to your individual unconscious motivators.
Right. So you had some who engaged and were outgoing, and some who were just observing and low responders.
There were some that started off as low responders and warmed. Yeah. There were some that the young lady who'd recently had a child and was expressing.
Yeah,
who made her excuse?
I
must drain my breasts.
Yeah, literally expressing.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, there were people who were confident. There was a couple of people in the room who were respected as leaders and seen as leaders. However, when those people left the room, it was interesting that other people opened up a little bit more. Not necessarily because of who they were, but I think. The hierarchical situation plays a role out there.
Yeah,
I think there were some people who were a little
hard
bit.
To say. You can't just say the more people in the Far East are more introverted than people in the West.
No, it was totally down to your internal unconscious motivators, which we explored in the afternoon when we did the print.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So when we were doing the print, I was coming. There was people I'd been working with for half a day. And I don't look at the print reports beforehand. So I'm just looking at the people, working with the people during the morning, and then when it comes into the afternoon and we're getting them to reveal their unconscious motivators, and I'm there thinking, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. I can see that.
So it's fascinating. So just to sort of wrap up this hubcast and Spence, if there was, I'm going to sort of put you on the spot here, I guess, but if there was one or two things that, maybe we in the Western world from a leadership perspective could still take from the Eastern side of the world and the different cultures and the way things are done over there and that complete focus on efficiency and production.
Yeah.
What would it be? It might be just that, but what would it be?
I don't think, I think the term that you coined, balance.
Yeah.
I think that's it, because we've seen we are capable of producing one extreme or another. And at the moment, we are focusing very much on the happy people more productive. And we're looking at the social psychology and the behavioural psychology of our workers and the happiness of our workers, contentment, I suppose, to a certain degree.
Yeah, and I read something lately, Spence, as well, just tying into that when they've surveyed mental health across the world, yes, there is still there is still depression and anxiety and stress in the Far East and in the Eastern cultures. However, it is lower than the Western world. It's not as much as of an epidemic.
Right.
I think there's a lot of factors at play as to why that might be, including things like diet, etc. However, we are dealing in the Western world, it seems to, with the well-being of our workforce more than the rest of the world. Yeah. And I think that's probably led to our extreme of the soft and social and cultural side of our businesses. Yeah. But I guess what you sort of was starting to say there is the balance is still really important.
Very much so.
Yes, let's cater for that and let's do our very best, but we've got to drive outcomes, be efficient, focus on production, etc. Yeah, the balance is the right way.
I think getting that balance. The Far East are definitely focused on the efficiency side of things and the production side of things. However, I think they've got a good balance in the fact that when we start talking about their culture, we're talking about their historical culture. We're starting to talk about the things that their people did back in the day that has influenced what we do now. They do it as a matter of fact anyway. Yeah. So I think there's very much like you're talking about sort of self-care, self-worth, actual feeling rewarded for doing a good job.
Yeah.
Because they've done a good job.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. It's at the end of the day, the priority is the company.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Yeah. Makes sense. So you had a good trip then, Spence?
I did. It was...
and next stop is...
India, Pune. Pune in India. Yeah.
Pune in India. That'll be interesting culturally again.
Very much so, yeah.
Bunch of leaders out in Pune. Dave's also he's been to Costa Rica lately, but he's now going to go out to Poland. Yeah. So we're getting a real blend of insights from a leadership and cultural perspective across the globe, literally across the globe, which, like you say, one of the biggest things is, I tasked you to go out there with a little notebook and make observations and capture things. And one of the first things you said to me was, it ain't a great deal different when you really get to the crux of it, right? But there is that absolute focus on execution, on production, on efficiency, and it's still there, and it's always the number one priority.
Yeah, but I think as we're working over there, and there are people are actually sort of realizing that whether they're from Indonesia, India, or Illingworth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? From no matter where they are, people are people. They've got the wants and needs. There's certain unconscious motivators that need to be met. They've got families, they've got priorities, they've got things they need to do, things they need to achieve. And it doesn't matter what colour you are, what religion you are, what size you are, what position you hold. We are people. And I think that it's coming round that corner again. But I don't think it's been a million miles away from the Middle East, the Far East. But it's their cultural thing, and I think that efficiency thing is part of their cultural thing as well.
Absolutely. Spence Locker, fascinating. Thanks for that. And if there's nothing else to add, then...
Selamat Jalan.
What does that mean?
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Cheers, Spence.